Ladies and gentlemen, the pain of awakening is not physical. It is deeper. It is the pain that comes when what you thought was true begins to dissolve before your eyes. Most people are not prepared for this. They think awakening is about gaining more knowledge, becoming more spiritual, or feeling bliss all the time. But real awakening does not begin with gaining anything. It begins with loss. It starts when the stories you've told yourself begin to unravel. The identity you spent years building, your name, your status, your opinions, your roles, your dreams, they begin to fall apart. Not because someone takes them away from you, but because something within you realizes they were never truly you. That realization is not peaceful. It is terrifying. The pain comes from seeing how much of your life has been built on illusions. Illusions of control, illusions of self, illusions of permanence. You wake up one day and feel a shift. You can no longer pretend. The things that used to comfort you now feel empty. The relationships you once relied on feel strained. The beliefs you stood on no longer hold the same weight, and yet you cannot explain this shift to others. Words fail. How do you explain that you are being unraveled from the inside? How do you describe the grief of losing a version of yourself you thought was real? This is the death of illusion, and with every death there is mourning. You begin to mourn your old self, not because it was perfect, but because it was familiar. It was safe. You knew how to operate in that identity. You knew who to please, how to hide, how to succeed, how to survive. But now those strategies don't work. They feel false. You speak and hear your own voice echo with inauthenticity. You smile and feel disconnected from the gesture. You perform, but your spirit is no longer in it. That is the pain of awakening. It takes away the scaffolding of the false self and leaves you naked before your own soul. And the world does not make this easier. Society is built on shared illusions. When you start questioning, when you stop participating in the same games, you become an outsider. People ask what's wrong. They say you've changed. Some grow uncomfortable around your silence. Others try to fix you, offer distractions, or encourage you to go back to the old version of yourself. But once you see, you cannot unsee. The illusion is cracked, and no amount of pretending will make it whole again. There is a loneliness that comes with awakening, not because you are alone, but because few are willing to walk with you through this fire. Many prefer comfort over clarity. Most choose distraction over depth. So as you awaken, you may find your circle shrinking, your world becoming quieter. You will sit more with yourself, and in those moments the pain intensifies. Because there is nothing more uncomfortable than facing your own shadow in silence. You begin to see all the parts of yourself you tried to avoid. The fears, the insecurities, the patterns you inherited, the wounds you never healed. All of it rises to the surface, not to punish you, but to be acknowledged. To be seen, to be released. This is not easy work. It is not glamorous. No one applauds you for doing it. But it is necessary, and this necessity is what makes the pain sacred, because beneath the layers of illusion there is something real, something unshakable, but to get to it, everything false must fall away. You must be willing to lose who you think you are to discover who you've always been. That is the paradox. That is the process. Many cannot bear this stage. They retreat. They numb themselves with noise, habits, and distractions. They run back to the life that felt safe, even if it never felt true. They rebuild the illusion and call it healing. But deep inside they know they turned away from the call. But if you stay, if you sit with the pain, if you let the fire consume your illusions without running, you begin to feel something else. Not immediately, not dramatically, but subtly, you feel lightness where there was once heaviness, stillness where there was once chaos, truth where there was once pretending, not because everything is fixed, but because you are no longer hiding. And that is where real awakening begins, not in becoming someone new, but in unbecoming everything you were not. It hurts, but it heals. Solitude is one of the most powerful teachers on the path of awakening, yet it is also the one most people run from. To the untrained mind, solitude feels like punishment. It feels like exile, like abandonment. When the noise of the world fades, what remains is your own company, and for many, that is the most frightening place to be. We live in a world that constantly rewards movement, noise, connection, and stimulation. People pride themselves on being busy, on being needed, on being seen. There is always a screen to look at, a message to reply to, a task to complete. The world trains us to run from stillness. It conditions us to associate quiet with loneliness and isolation with something being wrong. So when someone begins to wake up, when their spirit starts to crave space, depth, and inner peace, they often find themselves alone. Not because they chose to isolate, but because the frequency they are stepping into no longer matches the people, places, and habits they once clung to. As their soul begins to expand, their environment contracts. What once felt fulfilling now feels draining. The conversations that once sparked joy now feel hollow. The distractions lose their flavor, and slowly a strange stillness takes over. This stillness is not glamorous, it is not poetic, it is raw. At first the mind protests, it says you're wasting time. It whispers you're falling behind, it screams you'll be forgotten. And beneath all that noise is the deeper fear. What if you are truly alone? This fear is not irrational. It is inherited. It comes from years of believing that our value is measured by our productivity, that our worth is tied to how others perceive us, that silence means absence, and that being alone means being unloved. But solitude is none of those things. Solitude is the mirror the world avoids. It is the temple where the truth speaks. It is the sacred space where you are stripped of roles, titles, expectations, and comparisons. It is the place where you meet yourself, not the self you present to the world, but the one that exists when no one is watching. To the untrained mind, this is terrifying, because when the distractions are gone, the mind has no more places to hide. It begins to confront the thoughts it buried, the emotions it avoided, the truths it suppressed. The untrained mind associates these moments with discomfort and calls it suffering. It panics, and in that panic it seeks escape. So most people don't stay long in solitude. They touch the silence and immediately retreat. They feel the discomfort and misinterpret it as danger. They rush back to noise and call it normal. But those who train their minds, those who stay, begin to see solitude for what it truly is: liberation. Because in solitude, you begin to hear your own voice again. Not the voice of your parents, not the voice of society, not the voice of fear, but your own voice, the one buried under layers of conditioning. You begin to notice your patterns, your addictions, your excuses. You start to see how often you've abandoned yourself in the name of belonging. You see the roles you've played just to be accepted, and slowly the pain of solitude begins to shift. It turns into clarity. You realize that much of your suffering came not from being alone, but from being disconnected from yourself. You were surrounded by people, yet starving for authenticity. You were busy, yet empty. You were praised, yet lost. Solitude begins to feel different. It is no longer a punishment. It becomes a sanctuary. You begin to cherish the silence because it is honest. It does not flatter you. It does not lie. It simply shows you what is, and in that clarity there is power. You start to rebuild yourself not based on what the world wants from you, but based on what your soul truly needs. The untrained mind will still whisper from time to time. It will still crave distractions. It will still remember the comfort of illusion. But now you know better. You've tasted the truth. And while truth is not always comfortable, it is always freeing. Solitude teaches you to be full on your own. It shows you that you were never truly alone. You were just out of alignment with yourself. It reveals that your greatest connection does not start with others. It starts with presence, with breath, with awareness. So while the untrained mind sees solitude as punishment, the awakened heart sees it as preparation. Because only when you can sit with yourself fully without distraction, without escape, can you walk into the world without losing your center. And that is the strength the world rarely teaches, the strength of being whole, even in silence. Truth is not soft. It does not arrive gently. It does not cater to what you want to hear. Truth is direct, piercing, and often inconvenient. It does not fit into the comfort zones we carefully build for ourselves. It does not bow to our preferences or fears. When truth enters your life, it demands something from you, responsibility. That is why so few people truly seek it. Many say they want truth, but what they really want is comfort disguised as truth. They want affirmations, not transformation. They want reassurance, not awakening. Because truth, when it truly reveals itself, will disrupt everything you've built on false ground. It will call into question your beliefs, your habits, your relationships, and your motives. And when it does, you are left with a choice: respond with responsibility or retreat into comfort. Comfort is easy. It asks nothing of you. It allows you to remain unchanged. It lets you avoid the mirror, avoid the shadow, avoid the deep work. You can live an entire lifetime inside of comfort and never meet the truth. You can surround yourself with like-minded voices, predictable routines, and emotional numbness, and you can call it peace. But it is not peace. It is avoidance. Truth is different. It is alive. It moves you, stirs you, sometimes shatters you. And most importantly, it holds you accountable. The moment you recognize a truth, you are no longer innocent. You can't unsee it. You can't unknow it. Once you've seen how your words hurt, you're responsible for speaking differently. Once you've realized how your fear holds you back, you're responsible for stepping forward. Once you've seen how your habits sabotage your growth, you're responsible for changing them. That is why truth feels heavy, not because it is cruel, but because it puts the power back into your hands. It no longer allows you to blame the world, your past, or other people. It turns your attention inward and says, now that you see, what will you do? And that question is what most people avoid, because responsibility is uncomfortable. It means owning your choices. It means taking action where you used to make excuses. It means being honest about the gap between who you are and who you could be. Responsibility means you must now live aligned with what you know, not what's easy, not what's familiar, but what's true. This is the moment when the real work begins. When you begin to live from truth, you may lose things. You may lose approval. You may lose relationships that were built on your silence. You may lose status, image, or the comfort of belonging to a crowd that no longer resonates with you. But what you gain is far greater: integrity, clarity, and freedom. There's a reason why many reject this path. They fear that truth will cost them too much, but the reality is, avoiding truth costs you more. It costs you your peace. It costs you your growth. It costs you the deep, grounded life that only comes from living in alignment. Comfort may protect your image, but truth protects your soul. When you start walking in truth, it becomes your compass. Not emotion, not opinion, not convenience. Truth teaches you to be still when you want to rush, to speak when you'd rather stay silent, to let go when you want to hold on. It refines you, it shapes your character, and over time, the weight of responsibility becomes strength. It is no longer a burden. It becomes discipline. You no longer run from hard conversations. You no longer hide behind old identities. You stand in the light, even when it exposes your flaws, because now you understand truth does not shame you. It awakens you. The process is not easy, but it is sacred. It requires courage. Every day you must choose it again. Choose awareness over avoidance. Choose growth over familiarity. Choose to do what is right, not just what is easy. In this way, truth becomes more than a concept. It becomes a way of life, a steady fire that burns away everything false and leaves only what is real. And when you live that way, even if the path is narrow, even if few understand it, you carry a power that comfort will never offer, the power of being fully awake and fully responsible for the life you're living. Most people try to survive their challenges by tightening their grip on plans, expectations, identities, and outcomes. They believe that if they can control everything, they will feel safe, that if they can predict and manage life, they will avoid pain. But control is not the path to survival on the spiritual journey. It is, in fact, one of the greatest obstacles. Survival on the path of awakening does not come from force, it comes from surrender. At first, this idea sounds weak to the mind conditioned by fear. Surrender sounds like giving up, it sounds like losing, but true surrender is not defeat, it is alignment. It is not abandoning effort, it is releasing resistance. The kind of surrender required in spiritual growth is the letting go of the illusion that you are the master of all outcomes. There is a point in every deep inner journey where the structures you once relied on begin to collapse. The strategies you used to cope stop working. The people you depended on may no longer understand you. The goals you were chasing start to lose their meaning. Everything becomes unfamiliar. That is when the temptation to control becomes strongest. You feel your identity slipping, and instinctively you try to hold on. But control is the ego's final attempt at safety. It says, if I can just fix this, if I can just understand this, if I can just make this go away, I'll be okay. But awakening doesn't respond to control. It only deepens through surrender. The more you resist the process, the more painful it becomes. The more you cling to who you were, the harder it is to become who you are meant to be. Surrender is the moment you stop trying to bend reality to your will, and instead allow life to shape you. It is the moment you let go of needing answers and start living the questions. It is when you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start observing what it is trying to teach you. This is not easy. The mind wants plans, it wants clarity, it wants to be in control, but the soul is asking for something deeper. It is asking you to trust the unknown, to let go of timelines, to accept what is without fighting it. In that space, everything changes. You begin to feel a different kind of strength, not the strength to push through, but the strength to let go. You realize that you don't need to control the storm. You need to be still within it. You understand that healing doesn't come through pressure, but through presence. That growth doesn't come from forcing, but from flowing. Surrender teaches you to release the outcome and focus on alignment. It shifts your attention from "what do I want to happen" to "what is the truth of this moment." And in that space of awareness, you begin to see that survival isn't about winning. It's about transforming. It's not about avoiding the fire. It's about letting the fire burn away what is false so that what's real can remain. Most people don't survive the process of spiritual awakening because they try to control it. They try to make it look a certain way. They compare their journey to others. They hold on to old identities, trying to evolve without letting go. But transformation is not negotiable. You can't carry the past into a future that demands your wholeness. You can't become who you're meant to be while clinging to who you were. Surrender is not passive. It is a fierce, active trust. It is choosing to stay present when everything feels uncertain. It is breathing through discomfort without needing to escape. It is showing up for yourself when no one else understands what you're going through. When you surrender, you do not collapse, you open. You create space for insight, healing, and renewal. You allow life to guide you instead of trying to control every step. And in that space, you begin to experience grace, not always in dramatic ways. Sometimes grace arrives as a quiet peace in the middle of chaos. Sometimes it comes as clarity after months of confusion. Sometimes it looks like strength you didn't know you had. The journey will still be hard. The path will still test you. But when you walk it with surrender instead of control, you stop fighting yourself. You stop exhausting your energy on things you cannot change, and you begin to invest it in becoming who you truly are. That's how you survive, not by dominating the process, but by yielding to it, not by managing life, but by dancing with it. Surrender is not weakness, it is wisdom. It is the quiet power of knowing when to hold on and when to let go.